Well, we've got another quick update on the rail situation out of downtown Toronto. This statement coming from Metrolinx just moments ago saying that they are beginning to run outbound trains from Union Station about every 30 minutes. Customers traveling into Union Station service will be less frequent, from 30 to 60 minutes between those trains. They do say that there is an ongoing CN network system failure that continues to affect all of its rail corridors. However, they are beginning to slowly resume service, acknowledging that Union Station, the hub of transit for downtown Toronto, is very busy tonight. So we'll continue to watch that. But some service resuming in a limited manner every 30 minutes, running those trains coming out of Union Station. Well, from downtown Toronto to downtown Calgary, Calgary home sales hit another record high in September, according to new data from the Calgary Real Estate Board. For more on what's happening in that city, we're joined by Anne-Marie Lurie. She is chief economist with the Calgary Real Estate Board. Thanks so much for making time for us today, Anne-Marie.
Thanks for having me.
So there's been a lot of interest in the Calgary real estate market recently. We'll get into the flow of migration to the province in just a minute. But when it comes to what's happening with home sales, another record high for the city of Calgary.
Yeah, we've had exceptionally strong demand really persist over the past several months. Not enough to offset the pullbacks that we had earlier in the year, but we're still seeing sales that are, almost 40% higher than what we would typically see at this time of year.
And yet interest rates are at the level that they are. Mortgage costs are so high. How do you make sense of it?
A lot of it is to do with the migration that we have coming into the province. And we're not just talking from international sources. I think many people have been facing that. But we've been seeing a strong inflow of interprovincial migrants from markets like Ontario and BC, which, for all intents purposes, generally are a higher priced market. So even though you have a higher interest rate environment, if you're coming from a place like Toronto to Calgary, we are still relatively affordable. If you just take a look at what your typical detached home is in Calgary, it's under $700,000. So anyone who's coming from a market from Toronto to here is probably a lot less sensitive to that higher interest rate environment.
When you're looking at condos, they're less than half the price, the average price, if you were comparing Toronto to Calgary. The condo market in particular has been interesting because has that always been a market that is particularly attractive in the city of Calgary, or is it more the detached homes that you see a lot of enthusiasm for?
Well, it had traditionally been detached homes, but the challenge is that there's a lot less supply, especially in the affordable ranges of detached properties. So if we think back a couple of years ago, the typical detached home was in the $500,000 range. Well, that doesn't really exist much anymore. So what's happened is we're kind of going through this transition where we're seeing a lot more of a shift towards more affordable product, and that's where the apartment condo has come in. That segment has really struggled. We had price declines throughout 2014, right up until 2020. So, prices have only recently recovered in the apartment condo market. And because they are really the most affordable product in our market, we've really seen a shift in demand over the past 2 years. So exceptionally strong sales levels, activity. We have seen some price growth, but again, that price growth hasn't been quite as strong as what we've seen in some other property types, especially if we go back to 2014.
It's interesting, too. It came up in our meeting this morning, some wondering if maybe the flow of people from some of these big cities like Toronto and Vancouver, or bigger, cities, the people that are used to living in condos already are coming to Calgary and thinking, well, I'm going to live in a condo, of course, because I lived in a condo in the last place I lived in. Do you think maybe there's something to that as well because of this migration from other areas, that maybe more people are looking at those condos?
It is possible. I think everything in our market has been selling. We're kind of dealing with very limited supply right now. So I think that demand has happened not just for apartment condos, but even on the detached side. And I think this is where it's been a bit of a surprise. The fact that we've had such strength in our 700 to $1 million price range. I mean, we don't typically have as much activity in that area, and we've really seen an increase. And I think, again, that is almost a reflection of the fact that we have more people coming from higher price markets that don't feel like $700,000 is as much for a detached home. And maybe they are, some of them are choosing to buy that and an apartment. It's really difficult to say. We don't have those specifics, but we do know there's been a lot of demand for apartment condos. Also, we have to keep in mind our rental rates. They've also been rising here, very strong in rentals. So that's actually become more appealing, especially because our price point for those apartment condos is much less. And
what about inventory levels right now? I understand that they're increasing, but still not to really, high levels.
Yeah, our inventories in Calgary are exceptionally low. We haven't seen anything this low since back in 2006, and our population is much bigger now than it was back then. And where we've seen most of the decline in inventory has been really related to anything priced under $700,000. That's the stuff that's really been moving quite quickly. We have seen some inventory gains, but it's only $700,000 plus that we're seeing that movement. So really exceptionally low inventory levels, especially given the demand that there's been in the market. And it's in part what's been causing some of the price gains that we've seen over the past little while.
In terms of expectations for future supply, I do understand that there are some, efforts being made by city officials to try to get, changes made that makes it easier to get buildings constructed and to get more units available, built, and breaking down some of the barriers, whether it's zoning or what have you, to do that. What are your expectations when you're sort of looking big picture at supply for the city of Calgary?
Well, I think this is one of those differences for Calgary. We do have land available. It's just a matter of how quickly can we get this land developed and bring units on site. So the fact that they're making progress and towards reducing some of that red tape, that should add to the overall supply in the market. Now, the challenge is, when will that come on? I mean, we do know that there's a time delay between them actually getting approvals and built. So what I'm often looking at is how many people are coming in relative to those households that are being built, and what is that household formation relative to the new home construction. Right now we're still at a deficit. I think that as these policies come into place, we could start to see things start to improve, but it's going to take some time for our market to return to more balanced conditions. It's going to take time for that supply level to rise.